Thank you very much. And so I encourage all participants that wish to ask a question to do so. I did receive a question in the chat, and I will start with this one. If Dr. Demasure thinks that after the COVID-19 pandemic, we will see an increase of these cases, since religious communities in lockdown are perhaps even more exposed to the risk, ... at least of abuse by the other members of the community. What do you understand from that question? I'm reading the comment.
I could understand from that question if it is a lockdown, especially if they speak about within the congregation. I think if it is a lockdown and we have seen a rise in violence, like also Dr. Delphine Colin-Vidzina said, that lockdown raises violence and raises abuse cases. And I think it won't be different in religious congregations. But the other thing is also true. If the priest cannot come in anymore, that there are no masses, that there are no confessions, and I think it might be less from that side.
Thank you. Now I will take the first hand that I saw was Monsieur Rosaire. Donc, if you can ask your question, please.
Okay, do you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you. Well, first of all, it's a shame there's so little research and publication on such important subjects, and I congratulate you to go forward and to implicate yourself, your groups, and many people who are actually assisting to these conferences. My question is, there some data or research on psychological harassment by priests on nuns? For some, unfortunately, I was witness a few times of nuns treated like slaves by some priests when they are their personal administrative assistant or secretary. And I have a case in mind that goes so far away so that it ends up with depression and suicidal attempts and things like that. And actually, it seems to be even a bigger taboo than the sexual things. So is there some literature on this? Or if not, any kind of reflections from you would be most interesting.
Yeah, I can give reflections. There's no research, but first of all, I can appreciate the statement of the International Union of Superior Generals, because they speak about any abuse, any kind of abuse. Okay. And we see that becoming broader and more respected. The Pope also has admitted that, and I think we all know that in some, and by some priests, nuns are treated like at least their servants. Let's use the word slaves. I do know that also from my own experience, like in Leuven, which is a very international university, when I knew a number of Indian priests quite well. And when went away after his thesis, doctoral thesis defense, I said, what have you learned now in Leuven? But separated from the theology. And he said, I won't let a sister with a doctorate do my laundry anymore. It stuck with me. I found this, it's horrible, no? That someone has to say that. Yeah, and this was North Africa, this was India. So I think we all know it. It's also because it's also a gender issue. If I worked in Rome, and I went to several conferences, and there were many priests and higher bishops and cardinals. And when I entered the room during the break, they said to me, "Can you get me a coffee, please? Because you're a woman, it's for sure you're going to serve." I didn't get it. I didn't go for the coffee. But you see, it is there's a big culture that has to change. Yeah, and but like I said, it's very difficult, because to do research you need money, and it's very difficult to get money for a research on women religious.
Thank you, Dr. Demasure, for your answer and for your question, Monsieur Vaillancourt. The next person, s'il vous plaît, Catherine Pede, if you can ask your question.
I wonder if you could comment, Karlijn, on the alignment or lack of alignment between your presentation and the previous canon law presentation. In other words, the questions about the church investigating itself and having independent commissions to investigate allegations, and also the issue of anonymous complaints and the extensive review we just received of the rights of the accused. Given what we learned yesterday, that 95% of allegations are founded, only 5% of allegations are false. How much do we have to be concerned about protecting offenders over against the rights of victims? So could you just comment a bit on these two realities that we're trying to navigate?
Yes, it's a very good question. Thank you. So I think that Vos Estis Lux Mundi made a big step forward, that it is also about vulnerable persons. However, it doesn't go to the highest instance like the CDF. You know, it doesn't go there. And often it stays with the bishops. So I find it a progress, but it's certainly not enough. You have to know, in my opinion, in the very long history of the church, even separated from canon law, there has always been more interest in perpetrators and in victims. Just look at the thing of confession. No one asked the question, what is happening to that victim? So it was very much perpetrator oriented, as well canon law, I think, as also the whole attitude. We get slowly now a change, but I think it has to come from the people of God. Everyone is integrated in that. I do not exclude a hierarchy from the people of God, but it has to come from all of us. And we really have to go for independent investigations, or at least investigations where many lay people, men and women, are part of it, for people who are educated in the field. We also have to be careful that if they are part of it, that they have a role in decision making, and that they do not, that they are the ones who are competent in the field, and not the ones who are considered to be good, faithful people. Yeah. So I think there is much to do to bring the victims more into canon law, but also even more in our thinking. Victims of all kinds of abuses, like the one just before you, the Mr. who spoke before you indicated. It's not only about sexual abuse. Besides, I didn't discuss that, but we know very well sexual abuse never comes alone, never. It's also spiritual abuse. It's always psychological abuse as well, and sometimes also really physical. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Demasure, and thank you, Mrs. Pede, for your question. The next person to ask a question, we still have a few minutes, will be Ute, now I'm going to pronounce your last name,
German.
Lemgruber,
Yeah.
I think.
Lemgruber, yeah. Hi, Ute. Your mic.
Hello,
Yeah.
thank you very much. Ute Leingruber is my name. I'm very grateful to be with you at your conference. I'm from Germany, so I have to apologize for my English, please. I have two questions. The first one is, you said there is a relationship between spiritual abuse and sexual abuse. And I think there is also the spiritual counseling or spiritual accompaniment is very ambivalent. So we see at the report from Missio, the women religious, they need spiritual counseling. It's top one. What they are asking for. And at the same time, we know that spiritual abuse is a grooming strategy, is a preparation for sexual abuse. And priests are in the person of Christ, and they they take it as a strategy, as their spiritual role. So this ambivalence, I would ask you. And the second question, what do you think? Are there any chances that in the rules of the church, the laws like Vos Estis Lux Mundi and others, is there a chance to implement the knowledge of all these studies that the abuse of adults exists, and that we can draw the lines between mutual consent and abuse, and the line between freedom and dependence? And what do you think? Are there any chances for hope?
Yes, let's say yes, because I do not want to I don't know how they say it in English, but anyway, yes. But spiritual accompaniment, I think, I don't know why only priests could be able to give spiritual accompaniment. And I see, for instance, in Belgium, where there is really a lack of many priests, that at this point the Jesuits are really doing education of many lay people who are able then to also do spiritual accompaniment. Of course, they are at that point also in this power relationship, and the risk of being abused by the layman also exists. So it is those who are in power that we have to educate to respect the lines. But at least this spiritual accompaniment, the one who takes care of this spiritual accompaniment, will not be there in the person of Christ. He will not have the sacramental power. So the power differential becomes less. And in that case, of course, the chance to be abused is less. And that is an important thing. Then about the Vos Estis Lux Mundi, is it going to be, Vos Estis Lux Mundi, it's for 3 years, eh? And if I hear the discussions of on a very high level, because I still have some relationships there, I hear they are not happy with this definition of the Pope. They do not want it to be so broad, because the Pope says that also you can situational be vulnerable, but not always. For instance, you are not vulnerable. You are, for instance, a superior general. But if you are in the hospital and seriously ill, you are vulnerable in that situation. So, and that is this deprivation of liberty, even occasionally. I heard that someone to take that out. And that would be such a disaster and such a loss of progress that we, with this document of the Pope, have made. So I really hope they keep it in, but I hope. Are they going to integrate those studies? It depends, because not always the most competent people are part of the decision makers. So we will have to see. Yeah.